You're welcome.
And so I think we will continue with another young and brilliant trainee in our laboratory, which is currently in internship in our immunohematology laboratory, Isabelle Rue, who will present us data about the COVID-19 associated coagulopathy from the lab side. Isabelle?
Yes, hello?
Hello. The floor is yours.
Hello?
Isabelle? Do you hear me?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. You can share your screen.
Confirme qu'ils t'entendent.
Everyone can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see your screen. You are ready to go.
C'est bon?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, with the supervisions of Laurence Rosen, I will present to you a talk entitled COVID-19 associated coagulopathy. So, from the lab side, COVID-19 is a multisystemic disease causing a rapid lung damage involving multiple organs with obviously a very high risk of thrombosis. The pathophysiology of COVID-19 associated coagulopathy is not well defined by now and constantly challenged. Indeed, coagulopathy seems to be multifactorial and highly complex process. Faced to this rather unknown disease, numerous reports were conducted at the early beginning of the pandemic, and some of them are now challenged. So these presentations attempt to critically analyze some data published in the last month. Oh, okay. So what are the main changes in coagulation marker in COVID-19 patients? In this study led by Julie Helms, we can see that in ARDS COVID-19 patients hospitalized in intensive care units, D-dimer, fibrinogen factor 8, and Van Willebrand factor are increased, while PT, APTT, and platelet counts are within the normal range. She also noticed that lupus circulating anticoagulants were positive in more than 90% of the patients. But all of these observations need to be considered with caution, and I will discuss most of them later in the presentations. It is interesting to know that in the same study, Helms compared two groups of patients, COVID-19 ARDS patients versus non-COVID-19 ARDS patients. And we can see that D-dimer are less increased in COVID-19 ARDS patients compared to non-COVID-19 ARDS patients. The fibrinogens is higher in COVID-19 patients compared to non-COVID-19 ARDS patients. Same observations for the antithrombine, the prothrombine time, and the platelet counts. These three parameters are higher in COVID-19 ARDS patients compared to the non-COVID-19 ARDS patients. So let's focus now on D-dimer. Several studies investigate the use of D-dimer for the risk stratifications at admissions. For example, some investigate D-dimer levels in survivor and non-survivor at admissions. D-dimer were more elevated in non-survivor patients, and some others discuss that D-dimer above a certain cutoff may be linked with an increased risk of death. Furthermore, in this meta-analysis published in May, we can see that standardized means difference in D-dimer values in COVID-19 patients with or without severe disease is around 1, meaning that elevated D-dimer are linked with the severity of COVID-19. But there is some confusions and some potential misleading informations because of the considerable heterogeneity between all of these reports. In this table, from a mini review published in June, we can observe that manufacturer and D-dimer products used are very different. In addition of this, units used are not the same. And most importantly, the cutoff values are either not identified or either very heterogeneous. Based on this heterogeneity, the conclusion should be more nuanced. It may not be possible to truly standardize D-dimer assay, but there's a need to conduct prospective studies as standardized as possible. In the first Chinese studies, it was suggested that the severity of COVID-19's coagulopathy was associated with the development of DIC as defined by the ISTH score. For example, in a study conducted by Tang, 70% of patients who died from COVID-19 met the diagnostic criteria of DIC on admissions. But if we look more closely at the patient's coagulations parameter on admissions, we notice that fibrinogen levels are increased, while PT is within the normal range. And this goes against the ISTH score. So these patients, at the time of admissions, do not have DIC. The current hypothesis is that DIC could appear in severely ill patients, but seems to be more associated with a secondary bacterial infection. What about the lupus circulating anticoagulants? Like ALMS, several studies also report the presence of APL in COVID-19 patients, but we can easily point out some limitations. These limitations reside in the small cohort of patients considered, and also in the limited number of patients that were retested after 12 weeks, even though this is a diagnostic criteria. Furthermore, APL may be positive in case of strong inflammations. Also, critically ill COVID-19 patients shows mainly positive lupus and triple positive are very rare. So these APL are more likely to be transient. For these reasons, it is premature to conclude that there is a contribution of APL in COVID-19 coagulopathy. The pathophysiology of the coagulopathy is constantly challenged by new relevant insight. And the most recent hypothesis discussed the possible involvement of the complement system. Conway and Predial propose a model based on the interaction of the virus with the complement system and the link between the complement system and the coagulation. The basis of this hypothesis is the characterizations of two proteins in the virus capsid, NP and SP. These two proteins cause an overactivation of the lectin pathway. Then the lectin pathway is capable of cleaving prothrombin into thrombin. In addition, thrombin will allow the cleavage of protease activating receptor, which will lead to the activations of endothelial cells, leukocytes, and platelets. Thrombin will also cleave the C5 into C5a and C5b. C5 amplifies the inflammations by activating leukocytes, endothelial cells, and platelets, and C5v amplifies the activations of the complement, creating a vicious circle between coagulations and complement activation. This hypothesis would create new therapeutic targets, and we can also find anti-complement drugs on the market right now. So I would like to end my presentations with a quick focus on our laboratory observations. We actually faced a massive influx of coagulations routine tests, which led us to adjust our region stock and also review our organizations on the different sites. This massive influx show high levels of D-dimer and fibrinogens in COVID-19 patients. We also observed an increase in interference on the measurement of APTT using the ActinFS reagent, leading to an early reaction error alarm. This alarm reflects an abnormal clot wave at the early beginning of the clotting reaction. So some papers seem to incriminate propofol, that is an anesthetic widely used in intensive care units, as responsible for this anomaly. To investigate this hypothesis, we spike some plasma with increasing concentration of propofol, but no case of early reaction error was detected, whatever the concentrations. Furthermore, we observed this alarm in patients that were not treated by propofol. So these observations, together with our in vitro data, leads us to suppose that the cause of the interaction is not due to propofol, but to the patient's condition. So to conclude, COVID-19 associated coagulopathy is multifactorial and highly complex process. Several studies have been carried out, but the pathophysiology is still not well defined by now. DIC is clearly not implicated. Primary hyperfibrinolysis also been incriminated. And most importantly, neurulent insights like the complement hypothesis are highly interesting because of the development of new therapeutic targets. So thank you, and I'm